freedom, pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters here on UCY.tv. Welcome. If you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. This is a program where we discuss what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that has plagued so much of the advanced world and is threatening to destroy us, really, and to also take away our freedom. And it's what I have spent most of my professional career dealing with, writing about, blogging about. My books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. My other book, my in-depth study on character disturbance called Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age. And my book for the Christian faith community called The Judas Syndrome. Those are the books that I've written in this regard. And then I also post weekly articles on two blogs, the Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life blog at www.counselingwith2lsresource.com. That's counselingwith2lsresource.com. And also my own blog at www.manipulative-people.com. That's manipulative-people.com, where I have a new series on trust and character that has been featured over the past couple of weeks and will continue for the next couple of weeks. And I'm also going to have some announcements very soon about an upcoming webinar at the end of September and also about some workshops that I'll be doing for professionals. And some of them may be open to the lay public as well. But if you want to give us a call, if you want to contribute to the program, if you have a question you want to ask, a question about any of the articles that I've written, a question about anything in any of my books, maybe you have something to share, just give us a call at 718-717-8296. Once again, that's 718-717-8296. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about this week. There's so much in the news, from Donald Trump to Bill Cosby again, to this this other Islamo-Nazi who showed up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and took the lives of so many innocent folks who were at the recruiting center there. Gosh, it's going to take a lot to wake us up to the phenomenon of our time. And I've said many times before, we just cannot forget the link between the kinds of perverted ways that people think, the kinds of twisted thinking that foster character disturbance, and all of these weird things that appear to be happening to us these days. When it comes to disturbed character, it's not their sentiments or their feelings that have gone awry, and it's not their unconscious fears or anxieties that cause them trouble. It's the twisted, distorted beliefs that they hold that predispose them to act in obscene ways. This is the problem that we're facing today. And I've been a therapist for many years. And one thing that mental health professionals really know in their hearts, they really do know this, even if they won't say it. You know, it's not politically correct to say it. But the one thing we really know is it doesn't matter what kind of fancy label we place on behavior these days. It doesn't matter whether we call it some kind of addiction, you know, like a pornography addiction or a video game addiction or any of the other kinds of crazy labels that we put on things. Or, you know, if we meet the criteria, you know, the latest diagnosis du jour is bipolar disorder because someone's so unstable in their mood and behavior. I'm not poo-pooing that, by the way. There is actually a genuine clinical condition based in an abnormality of biochemistry. But these labels are thrown out with such carelessness these days, just to give somebody a label, basically. And it makes people think, when people hear these disorder labels placed on something, it gives the impression that there's some kind of illness that the person is suffering from that they can't control. When in fact, what most mental health professionals know today is that 9 out of 10 times, when somebody is brought to a therapist's office, the issue is one thing and one thing only. It's character. It's the fact that the person hasn't grown up, learned to be responsible, that their conscience hasn't developed well enough, that their sense of empathy and care and concern hasn't developed well enough, that they don't have sufficient regard for other people and the impact of their behavior on other people's lives. These are the things that cause people to dysfunction today. And most everybody in a problem relationship actually knows this. Most therapists know this as well. Even if they give some kind of fancy label to what's going on, they know that underneath it all, 9 times out of 10, the issue is character and nothing but character. So what do you do? What do you do? Well, that's what one of my books, Character Disturbance, is primarily written for. And I have many, many articles on my blog and on the Counseling Resource blog, on both the manipulative-people.com blog and the counselingresource.com blog. I have many articles on this topic. Because I get emails, I probably get 25 to 30 emails each week asking the same question. How do I find somebody who gets it? I've been to therapy 3 or 4 times with a person I'm in a relationship with and got no help. As a matter of fact, I think that my partner manipulated the therapist, swayed their opinion, seduced them in some way, conned them, went through the motions. They didn't get it. Worse than that, they don't really understand what I'm going through. And they don't have appropriate regard for the trauma of it. So I'm kind of getting victimized all over again, twice. Call this therapy-induced trauma. The victims in relationships with disturbed characters go through this. I know many folks who've had that experience, some who've called into the program and related that to me. Maybe you have such an example. If you do, or if you want to have any other questions answered, or if you want to just contribute something you think would be of value to the listeners, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Boy, there's so many people to talk about in the news today. I don't know where to start. I thought I'd start a little bit because I mentioned earlier about these labels that we throw out so indiscriminately in the mental health field so many times. Everyone seems to be an armchair theorist. I just love to watch the talking heads on TV. You know, I don't do that kind of thing anymore, and for a good reason. It's because the news is so sensational, and you have to be willing to basically tout the party line, so to speak, when you go on these programs. I see we have a call coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and take this call. Let's see who it is. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters. Hello. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters. Well, it seems like we have another. Hello? Well, it seems like we have another problem with the phone lines again today. So whoever the caller is, I might ask if you please hang up and try again. That seems to be a way that we can get these calls to come through when we have problems like this. I'm sorry that we've been having problems lately, but we'll do our best to resolve these problems as best we can. So I'm sorry for the caller's problems getting through, but if you want to try again, give it a couple of minutes and call in again at 718-717-8296. We'll try to patch you through. Let's go first to the case of Mr. Cosby. I want to say a couple of words about that. Because, once again, I was talking earlier about these labels that we throw out so indiscriminately and how the talking heads on radio and TV spout these fantastic lines, these sensationalistic kinds of things. Well, we have a caller trying once again to get through, so we are going to do our best to get you to come through. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Hi, Dr. Simon. Yes, it came through this time. Thank you for taking the
call.
Oh,
you got through. Thank you for trying once again.
Yes, and thanks to Chris, who's opened up the phone lines for us.
Okay.
Yes. It seems like I was getting rewarded. They've gone to the top of all the positions. It seems like people that gravitate towards this power. When we look at all the institutions, we see all of them having failed us, and can we look then for to have them then come and save us now? Is it a degeneration of these institutions, of the schools, the churches, the government, especially how we see this?
What a great question. That's really a fantastic question. And if you don't mind me putting you on the spot just a little bit, if you would tell me your sentiments of at least one institution that you think has failed us and why you think it has.
The government mainly, and then of course
Tell me, with respect to the government, why you think it's failed. In what way do you see that the government has failed us?
The government is actually takes the position opposite of where it is supposed to stand, and that is protecting the rights of the individual, and instead we're, I believe, incorporated into a serfdom where we serve the government as opposed to the government serving us.
Oh, okay. Your thoughts on the impact that has on character and fostering or enabling or rewarding this epidemic of character disturbance that we have?
Yes, it would certainly seem to be engineered to for the disruption of societal flow where things are harmonious. Every situation that can be looked at seems to be in disharmony. So, and like I said, I think if an honest look would reveal that it's been engineered to be so. So, what is the purpose? Where comes this? The character behind the characters that are being expressed today by most people that are in power.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate your question. If you'll hang on a bit, I'm going to do my best to answer it, and then I'll give you a chance to ask anything else or share anything else that you want. But there's no question in my mind that some of our major institutions have not only broken down, that used to foster character development in us. They've not only broken down, but as you say, some of these institutions now are even in the business of promoting character dysfunction, even rewarding it. For example, government and politics, the whole idea behind our system of government is that, and I've said this many times, as a matter of fact, in my yearly posts around the 4th of July, I talk about John Adams's comment that our Constitution was designed with this idea of limited government. It was designed with people of good moral fiber in mind. The thought was that if people who are religiously grounded, who are faith grounded, morally centered, have their own internal moral compass, so to speak, if these kinds of folks are left alone, two things will happen. They will prosper individually, and they will also have such a community mindedness that they will build enterprises that help others prosper as well. And so all government needs to do is get out of the way. All it really needs to do is provide protection for people and then leave good people alone. That was the theory. That was the premise of our entire kind of constitutional government. The problem is it only works when you have people with a solid moral foundation. Your comment?
I absolutely agree. As we can see revealed in character of people of past generations, how much more of a moral fiber that was expressed and revealed in society, in the helping of others and the common good, but without force. So it might also be argued too that the boiling frog argument, in order to bring about a certain plan, then you would have to, of course, acclimate people. So if a person's natural character is to be good, then of course bad character stands out amongst the others. So through incremation, then people are acclimated. I guess is what I'm trying to say, to where we are today.
Yeah. But I would,
system.
Yeah, I would like to pose to you a little bit of a challenge here. So much of what you say is so much in line with what I've been talking about for all these many months on this program. But as far as institutions go, I'd like to challenge you on the notion that government really, and the fact that it has really eroded in its function, is really not anywhere near the culprit that the institution of marriage is. You know, character is a thing that is formed in individuals over a long period of time. We are among the most unusual creatures on the planet in that it takes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, month after month, year after year, for many, many years to shape us. And the proving grounds for that shaping of character is in the home. And, you know, people get together frivolously. They drift apart frivolously. They treat one another frivolously. They take the institution very unserious, not seriously enough. We all suffer as a result because, especially today, with all of the things that are in our culture, that with all the freedoms that we enjoy and all the mixed messages that our children get, we need to nurture so much in them. It takes years, and it takes a strong, intact family bond built on trust and built on sound principles and guidance, lived out, exemplified, modeled very well by parents. It takes all of that nurturing year after year after year, and it takes much longer than it used to, too, because our young people are exposed to so much and in so many venues, and generally it takes, 26 or 27 or 28 years for them to complete their education and get out there in the world and start producing. So it takes a lot, and it takes an intact family system. It doesn't just take a community, that old notion about it takes a village. It takes a family. That's the training grounds. That's the preeminent training grounds for building character. And that institution today is in more trouble than it's ever been.
Absolutely, and it's a stacked deck against most people in this world to, coincide with that happy family that is giving the good lessons and structuring in the growth. So, we find we turn our children over to the state for their education. They're their nanny, and we see what's being taught in the schools. We see what's brought about from all the media. They're teaching the kids, and so where do you win there? Because, like I said, being in a stacked deck with the mothers having to work and just a total destruction to the point where life itself is so cheap that it's accepted to murder an unborn child just to continue economically or any other. But mostly, that's a consideration, economics. Can you afford the child? So life is mostly meaningless to people these days.
Did you have another question or comment for me? I really want to talk a little bit today about the Cosby affair, and I want to talk about Trump, and I want to talk about this shooter in Chattanooga. I got several things on tap for today. Did you have another question or comment you wanted to make?
No, Dr. Simon. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate your program, and I hope you don't think I'm disagreeing with you.
Oh, not at all. And I really appreciate your question, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh. Well, persistence pays off. And I'm sorry, folks, that we continue to have such problems from time to time with the phone lines. But as you can see, if you're a little persistent and wait a few minutes and then try again, most times you can get through. So if you have a question or a comment, you want to share something, you want to pick my brain about something, you have a disagreement maybe, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, I don't know where to start first with the Cosby thing, but I want to say a few things about it because, like I said, all these labels are thrown out, and these talking heads on TV, I hear them all the time throwing out this stuff, this ridiculous stuff. I heard one commentator on one of the news programs talking about Cosby now that new revelations have come out from his deposition back a few years ago. Now that new details have emerged, one person was speculating that he had a sexual paraphilia called somnophilia. Now this is a rare sexual perversion where a person basically gets excited by the idea of having sex with someone who is either sleeping or appears to be sleeping or is drugged out and incapacitated in some way. It's not like necrophilia where you want the person to actually be dead, but it's another paraphilia where you want the person to be unresponsive because it is exciting to you to have your way with someone when they can't respond in any way. So I heard one commentator suggesting that that's the illness that drove Cosby to his actions. Then I heard another person suggest that he was a beastophile. And by the way, beastophilia has to do with having a special sexual interest or an unusual deriving sexual excitement from rape. This is the whether it be forcible, physical force during the act of rape, or simply enjoying the fact that someone is denied of consent. This would be beastophilia. So I heard all this speculation. But here we have a guy, who is rich and famous and powerful, with a huge sexual appetite, and with very poor character. So someone who went out preaching to others of poor character. And by the way, none of the things that he spoke to with regard to the poor character of his audience, none of those things that had any truth in them are diminished by the fact that he is a hypocrite and a poor character himself. Now, let me repeat that. The fact that he's a hypocrite and a poor character himself, and he is. It's not rocket science and it's not psychology to look at his track record, his MO, even his own admissions, and be able to judge the deficiencies and disturbances of his character. But just because someone with plenty of character deficiencies decides to call out the character deficiencies of others doesn't diminish the fact that they have those deficiencies and that those deficiencies are a cause of the problems in their life. So when he was running around giving these talks, basically putting people on notice that the reasons for their failures had to do with their character problems, the fact that he is a hypocrite, and he is a hypocrite, the fact that he's a hypocrite doesn't diminish the truth of those comments. It does, however, give individuals who are struggling with character issues of their own an excuse not to pay attention and to discount because they see the hypocrisy. They witness the hypocrisy. And it gives them an out. So I'm hearing the talking heads propose all these possibilities for what drives Mr. Cosby. But here he has this character in which he has that kind of malignant narcissism that I talk about in several blog posts and I talk about in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, and Character Disturbance, especially Character Disturbance. I also talk about it in the Judas Syndrome, too, by the way. This kind of malignant narcissism that goes beyond just thinking very highly of yourself, just being self-centered. It's bad enough to be relatively narcissistic, but malignant narcissism goes a little further to a haughtiness and a sense of entitlement, especially a sense of entitlement, that prompts people to have a callous disregard for others and their rights, to see others in a particular way, to see them as objects, to objectify them, to dehumanize them, to see them as objects of self-gratification. And this is the character flaw in Mr. Cosby that prompted him to do these things. It's a matter of character. It almost always comes down to character these days. It almost always does. He had this appetite, and he had the position, the power, and God only knows the opportunity because of his position, his notoriety, his wealth. He had plenty of opportunity. He had folks wanting to affiliate with him, maybe some folks who had some ulterior motives of their own, thinking that if they could curry his favor, he could help them along in his career. Some of his victims flat out admitted that. But the issue of character goes to how he regards these other people. Does he really take an interest in them? Does he really have regard for them? Does he really, in an altruistic sense, want to help them along simply because he can? Or does he want to use, abuse, and exploit them because he can? And that, my friends, is a matter of character. It's not a disease. It's not a sexual paraphilia. It's a matter of character. That haughtiness, that sense of entitlement, and that complete disregard for the value of another human being. That's what's operational. That's what's operational as he goes from opportunity to opportunity, incapacitating individuals and having his way. Now, why does he do that? Somebody posed the question, well, why would he then, if he doesn't have this rare paraphilia, somnophilia, or if he doesn't have biastophilia, why then does he have to incapacitate? Well, the fact is, if you incapacitate and the person really doesn't know what's happened and isn't really sure of what happened and can't prove what happened, then they don't tell. You could preserve your image. You know, in my book, In Sheep's Clothing, I talk about how image is everything. These wolves in sheep's clothing, hence the title of the book, are master manipulators because they're able to manage our impression of them. We call this impression management. They can cast a good impression. They look great on the outside. It's their sordid, sick character on the inside that makes them actually dangerous. And Mr. Cosby is a perfect example. His persona even his TV persona, was as the lovable, trustworthy, kind, gentle soul. Now, some people would say, they're in classical psychology theories. In classical psychology theories, there is this notion that if we work too hard to repress our animal side, it comes out. It sneaks out. Carl Jung called this the shadow. It sneaks out in other ways when we're not looking, basically, when our defenses are down. And that only happens because we work so hard to repress our animal instincts. I got to tell you, that theory and that notion has some value in some cases, but it doesn't have to be always the case. Some people don't have all that much conscience to begin with, and they don't have all that much urge to repress anything. It's not that they're it's not that they're unaware or unconscious about their repression of their basic instincts. They're aware, all right. As I say in my workshops, they're aware, they just don't sufficiently care. They're aware, but don't care, at least not enough. And in Mr. Cosby's case, we have this case of entitlement, being all full of himself, because he could. He had the power. Abraham Lincoln said it best. He said it best, and he got it right, because there is that old quote often cited by Edmonds, I think it is, and I think they've kind of proven that he didn't say it, but at any rate, the quote goes, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely," meaning that it's power itself that's kind of like an aphrodisiac, and as you amass it, you just can't help it. Your character is going to erode. The more power you get, the worse you're going to be. Well, Abraham Lincoln had it right, and his quote has it right, and that is, if you want to test a man's character, if you want to test a person's character, if you really want to know what they're all about, don't judge just the appearances. If you really want to know how solid their character is, give them power. That will tell you. Once they have power, how they're prone to use it will tell you what they're all about. And as I say in both of my books, people with significant character defects are ravenous pursuers of power. That's how they get where they got in life. That's how they get there. They have an unbridled determination to get there. And that serves them well. That kind of ambition really works, especially in a free society. But here's where it gets a little problematic. People who don't have a solid internal moral compass not only pursue power unbridledly and unreservedly, but when they get it, they inevitably abuse it. And this is what happens, as the caller was alluding to earlier, this is what happens in political spheres, within government. People gravitating to these positions are power seekers. Otherwise, they wouldn't be gravitating to these positions. Power is what they're after. But because they're already significantly flawed in character so many times, it's what they do with the power when they have it that bespeaks their character. Now, there are a few folks you can look to. There are a few folks, if you look very carefully, who've been given the power, who, when it comes time to exercise it, you can see how conscientious they are in the exercise of that power. That speaks volumes about their character. I always give the analogy in some of my articles that I've written about power and character. I give the analogy each time: if power corrupted in itself, if power alone had the power to corrupt and had power to turn a person of decent character into a megalomaniac, then every parent on the face of the earth would be a monster. Because there's no greater power that you have over a human being, no greater power than the power that a parent has over a newborn infant. Those creatures, when they come into this world, those beautiful new life forms, those precious, precious human beings, when they first come into the world, they are in complete, total dependence upon us. They would die in an instant. They have no ability to care for themselves. They are totally at our mercy. We have absolute power over them. And that power doesn't wane for a long time. For a long, long time. So if power in and of itself were a corrupting influence, we'd all be monsters. Power itself is not a corrupter. It's the corruption in our character that causes us to abuse power when we have it. Causes some people to seek power too ravenously and for its own sake, and then abuse it as soon as they get it. So what I wanted to say about the Cosby affair is, you look very carefully. You could see that that's what it was all about for this guy. It was all about the sense of entitlement and the objectification of these objects of his desire for his personal use and pleasure. It was the malignant narcissism in his character that, quote unquote, drove him to do these things. And will he be held to account? Gosh, I hope so, somehow, some way. But, he may not be held to account until that final day when we're all held to account. You never know. No, don't have much more to say about that case. It's truly tragic. I feel for the victims. I hope they eventually get vindication. But there's a lot to be learned from that story. And perhaps one day we'll talk about it again. Perhaps there'll be new information come out. Maybe one day there'll even be justice served. Who knows? But that's about all I wanted to say about that. We have other things to talk about tonight, too. But once again, if you want to join the discussion or if you have a question you want to ask, you have an example you want to share that illustrates my point about the importance of character, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, the number to call. And once again, let me mention that if you have problems getting through the first time, just hang on, hang up the phone, try again after a few minutes, and you should be able to get through. For some reason, every now and then the phone answering system glitches, but then it seems to work okay. So if you don't get through the first time, please have patience, hang up, wait a couple of minutes, and then call in again. You'll probably get through, and I'm happy to take your call. Wanted to talk about some of the other things in the in the news these days. Donald Trump, he's kind of on a rampage. He really wants to be president this time. Really thinks he could do a great job, and he's pulling no punches, as they say. Uh, he speaks his mind. He's not one of the things I like for as flawed a character as he is. One of the things that I actually like about him, folks, is his lack of a censor. Because in his lack of a censor, in his lack of calculating manner, he doesn't calculate carefully what he's about to say. He just speaks extemporaneously without much second thinking. So we know what he's all about. We know the way he thinks. We know what his attitudes are. We know who he is, for bad or good, for better or for worse. We know what we're dealing with. We know who we're dealing with. Is he a buffoon? Yes, to some extent. He certainly is. Is he arrogant, conceited? Yes, he certainly is. Does he have something to show for it? Yes. Is he probably one of those folks who discounts the role that a certain amount of luck and the fortuitousness of circumstance has in personal success? Yes. All the above. But at least in his unguardedness, he tells us who he is, which is more than I can say for so many politicians out there who play to their audience, who pander, who carefully weigh how they're going to present themselves, who truly come to us as wolves in sheep's clothing, who truly only care about how we perceive them and how we perceive their agendas, and who say only what they think that we want to hear so that they will be elected. They monitor the polls. They calculate what's going to sell and what's not going to sell. And so that's what they present to us. And there's nothing real. They're complete phonies. Complete and utter phonies. A perfect example of that was given when somebody posted on Facebook and other places on the internet a side-by-side comparison of Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton with respect to their stance on gay marriage and other liberal issues. Well, the fact is that Mrs. Clinton's sentiments are very much in line with Mr. Sanders. But she knows, or she believes, it may not be the case this time, but she believes anyway, that the only way to successfully get herself into the White House is to take a more middle ground. So she was very calculating early on when she believed that the more popular sentiment of the populace was to support traditional marriage. And so that's how she cast herself and her beliefs, even though I believe that in her heart of hearts, she believed very much as Bernie Sanders believed, but as she was not willing to say in the beginning, and as he was willing to say from the very beginning. And that's the difference about character. Some people will tell you who they are, and others will not tell you who they are. They're just full of hidden agendas. You can't trust them. And by the way, that was the topic, and that is the topic of my series of posts on manipulative-people.com. a series that will go on for at least another couple of weeks about the absolute crucial nature of trust in relationships. We've lost all semblance of it. We can't trust each other. It's a phenomenon of our character-impaired times. A person's word is not golden, can't be taken at face value. It simply can't. Now, before we run out of time, we're getting close to the end of the hour here. Before we run out of time, I want to say a couple of words. Maybe you have some words to say about it too. You can give us a call at 718-717-8296 if you do. But I want to say a few words about the Islamo-Nazi who targeted the recruiting center in Chattanooga. You know, I I was laughing all through the day as I heard the carefully politically correct media. And I heard all of the folks that feed the media being ever so guarded, ever so politically correct in their comments. First statement out was that law enforcement was regarding this as a criminal act. Didn't see any signs of a terror act. So they were treating it like a normal criminal investigation. Then, as details started to emerge about the identity of the individual, being a Muslim, having an Arabic name, which raised a little bit more suspicion in the public's mind, as it would. But in these politically correct times, we have to be very careful not to prejudge a situation. And there's merit to that. There's merit to that. We don't want to prejudge. But there was an eerie similarity here. Once again, we had a recruiting center. And it's not like recruiting centers haven't been targeted before. So here we go again, we think, but once again, carefully, the media downplayed the possibility. Then more information came out about this individual having traveled to Jordan. We don't know if he was possibly radicalized there, having access to these ISIS tweets and posts on Facebook. And then there's this one tweet intercepted that talks about a surprise coming in Chattanooga. And then all of a sudden, the news breaks 9 hours after the fact that this was indeed an act of terror. And then the question becomes, well, how did it happen? How did this person become radicalized? This is a new term. I love this term. This is a new term that is being tossed around like there's some kind of formula. It's kind of like a hypnotic trance. You know, people are just fine. They're just fine. They're just law-abiding, God-fearing people practicing their religion in a benign way, because the religion itself is not corrupt, is not inherently a problem-causing belief system. So we have normal people, healthy people, who somehow succumb to this process we call now radicalization. It's kind of like you get under a spell. You go someplace, you get indoctrination. It's kind of like being brainwashed. And all of a sudden you come out different. And all of a sudden you want to now start killing people, killing Americans, killing Christians, killing all the infidels. I'm going to tell you, folks, there's more to it than that. These messages cannot fall on just ordinary ears and take root. These seeds are planted as often as they can be by the promoters of this ideology, but they take root in certain kinds of individuals. They take root in individuals who are already character predisposed. And I'm going to have much more to say about that in an upcoming program. This so-called process of radicalization is not something that anybody can succumb to. So now there's all this frenzy going on among the investigators. How did it happen? We want to know. Where did he get radicalized? How did he get radicalized? It always comes down to character. And as we learn more about this young man, and as we learn more about how he saw his world around him, the truth will eventually out. The truth will eventually out. And our best inoculation against all of these kinds of things, against all of these harmful ideologies that are promoted out there today, there are hundreds of thousands of toxic ideologies floating around out there these days. And our only inoculation against them is a strong moral foundation and strong character in the citizens of our country. It's the only thing that's going to keep us safe. It's the only thing that's going to keep us great. Character has to count. It has to matter more than anything. And the fostering of character in our young people has to be our number one business. We have to make it cool again, as a friend of mine is wont to say. We have to make it cool again to even care about character and to do our best to not only foster it, but to safeguard those institutions and to shore them up, safeguard all of those institutions that have traditionally been the nurturing grounds for character. Especially, as I mentioned before, the institution of marriage. When we're great as individuals, then we're great builders of great families. And when we're great builders of great families, then we're great builders of great communities. And when we're great builders of great communities, we have fashioned for ourselves, without even knowing it, a great country. That's how it works. It starts with the individual and their character. That's what matters. It matters more than anything else. So let's all do our part. I'll be back next week. Take care.